Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. This has been brought to you by the Liberty Beacon and TLBTV. Today I want to share with you 7 tips about protecting yourself online, cybersecurity. And this is really important. I know that it is talked about often, but we can't talk about it often enough because not only is it very prevalent, but it continues to be. And there's so many things that continue to happen. There's old tricks, but there's also new tricks. And millions of people are affected and victimized globally in the virtual realm. And so I'm going to talk to you today about 3 of the most prevalent types of victimization online, and that is identity theft, cyberbullying, and also stalking. Identity theft is rampant, and years ago, people used to only have to worry about physical documents such as a driver's license and a social security card and how to protect themselves if those documents were lost or stolen. And that would be by contacting the credit bureau agencies and putting a credit alert or a fraud alert on their account, if you will. And while that is still done in the event that you are victimized, it's not just left to those documents, physical documents, because people can gain access to your social security number, your driver's license number, and other things that can create an identity without having those physical papers in their hand, and they can get this all online. And so while you can still create an alert, oftentimes it can happen and go on for a long time without your knowledge. And so we want to talk to you about that a little bit in the protection aspect so that you can minimize the chances of it happening to you, period. And the next thing is cyberbullying. Now, this is also a virtual concern. I want to share with you that there is no age and no gender discrimination when it comes to cyberbullying. And oftentimes we think this cyberbullying just happens to those younger generations where it's those that are in maybe middle school or high school, but that is not the case. It can happen to anyone. And basically, there's a number of ways people can be cyberbullied. And it takes place when one or more persons harass another. And it can be done via the internet, text messages, or even email. And what it does is it harms a person emotionally and mentally, and then also socially. So, for example, these bullying tactics can be done in threatening messages or posts on social media, text messages, or even email. But anything that's kind of done in a virtual way is considered cyberbullying. And unfortunately, it can cause the victim long-term suffering. So even though the cyberbully may want to only create a short-term effect or create a threat or a hypothetical threat, even though the victim doesn't know necessarily that it's something that is a short-term thing, it causes long-term suffering because everything in the virtual world stays there. So even when posts are deleted and social media accounts are deleted, somewhere in the virtual world, it's there. And so this indefinite time period can affect the victim later on in life when they go to apply for a job or they're getting involved in a relationship of some sort, and these things can come back and actually interfere in that process. And so cyberbullying is another thing that we want to protect ourselves from. Unfortunately, not only can cyberbullying affect someone's future opportunities in life, but it can carry over into the physical realm when threats are actually carried out on the victim in the physical world. And so that is cyberbullying. Now, stalking is much like cyberbullying, but it's a less obvious form of harassment. And oftentimes it's usually done by a relative. And I don't mean relative in the terms of a family member. I should say more like in relational terms to someone, boyfriend, girlfriend, in some kind of a relation like that. And it's really more damaging than cyberbullying because the fear associated with it is so intense that it leads the victim to really question what the aggressor's motives are. And so it creates this internal monster for the victim. And there's a lot that the victim really doesn't know in terms of what's going on with the stalker, because they don't really know what is going on in the stalker's mind. So unlike a cyberbully, it's kind of all out there. The cyberbully puts it out online, says what's going on, whereas the stalker, the victim knows that they're being watched or possibly knows that they're being watched or even being followed, and maybe even that there's implied threats that are attached, but there's such a fear of the unknown that there's an internal monster and the fear is immense. And so it's a more silent issue than it is compared to cyberbullying. Although oftentimes the perpetrator does want the victim to know that they are being monitored, almost to the point of paranoia. And this allows the stalker to keep a lot of control of the victim. But it's a different type of control than what the cyberbully has. So while it may seem easier with cyberbullying in a sense because the threats can be seen in writing and we can see who the person is that made them based on the posts and so on, unless it's a fake account, but that can still be tracked. The stalker, they're kind of invisible until they make their presence known. And so the victim will have a suspicion that they're being stalked. There'll be some type of evidence, but they may not know who that particular person is. They may have a feeling who it is, but they don't always know for certain. And it just isn't immediately apparent. And it also isn't immediately apparent all of the different types of areas in their life that they are being monitored. Is it just one social media account? Does this carry over into the physical world? And are they just being watched or online? Are they being monitored? Does this carry over into actually a manifestation of physical assault? And so the fear with stalking is just enormous. So here's a few cybersecurity tips to help protect yourself. And let's start with the very first one. Okay, first, you want to ensure that, much like a gated community, people have a security system around their home if you're in a gated community, and to get in, you have to have an access code. So your Wi-Fi router should be password protected. So that way you can keep the riffraff out. Now, just like a gated community, those who want to get in can find a way in. And so you've got to protect yourself as best as you can. So the thing with that is you definitely want to have a really good, strong password. But why is it that you need to protect yourself, just on your router? Why do you need a password on your router? Well, there's neighbors and there's people who just drive around and they want free internet. So they will drive around or walk around in the neighborhood and they will jump onto somebody's Wi-Fi and just use, they will just use that person's internet service. And if you're like, okay, I really don't mind, well, if you're on a satellite and you have data, that will just eat up all your data. And here's another thing to think about also, is that if someone can access your Wi-Fi and then get on the internet, they can also get into your home computer. And so if you have more than one computer and you have a home network set up, they can actually get into your files and they can see personal documents that you have online. And so you can actually end up being a victim of opportunity, what somebody calls a crime of opportunity there, for someone who didn't intend to commit a crime, but then they see some information that they have access to, like you have a copy of your driver's license or social security number or tax documents or something like that in files. They're there, and they know now that they have access to that. And that could be a potential opportunity for you to be a victim of identity theft that way. And so you definitely want to be setting up passwords on your Wi-Fi router. The second thing is something called a VPN. Now, if you're not familiar with a VPN, it's called a virtual private network. VPNs actually are kind of, well, they're a little bit of a pain because it's an added layer of encryption, and yes, it gives you an extra step in what you have to do to be able to access your private network. But quite frankly, it's a lot better for you because it protects you. And basically, what happens is you maintain your information on a private network when it's going out over public networks. And so it's the next added level of protection for you. So your first line, Wi-Fi encryption, your next line is a VPN, or vice versa, however you want to do it. But to get on the internet, you've got to have a Wi-Fi. So the third tip I have for you is to turn your computers off when they're not in use. So I talked about at the very beginning, people can get in. If they want to get in, there are robots that just scour over and over, and they are looking for ways to gain access by just trying different passwords over and over and over at these high speeds, and these robots can do it, and there are hackers that can get in. And so what you want to do is, if you're not using your computer, you want to turn it off when it's not in use. They can't gain access to it if it's not on. So this is kind of lowering the chance of someone getting in to your computer to see what you have on there. So you're minimizing your risk, if you will. So think about some of these things that you do. Do you leave your computer on, or you think, okay, after so many minutes, it's going to turn itself off? That kind of thing. Just take the extra step. Plus, when you're properly shutting down your computer, you're saving your computer, the life of your computer. So this is something to think about. All of these different steps protect you in a lot of different ways, and some of the things that we don't even think about. So the next thing is setting your social media sites to private. So we think of some big name social media sites like Facebook, and I'll just leave it at that. And so you can turn on certain filters to ensure your privacy. Let me say a couple of things about this. One, when you first sign up, you want to set it to private. Two, updates happen, and these privacy settings can reset themselves to public. So you need to monitor this regularly. The thing is, if you have a public setting, people can gain access to your friends list. They can find out a lot of information about you. The added layer of protection by keeping your information private, of course, isn't foolproof, but it's another layer of security for you. And the other thing to think about when it comes to social media is being selective on who you allow as your friend. And this is on all social media sites, not just the major ones, all of them. People come up with fake accounts all the time. And so let me tell you, before I go any further about this, on how to identify a fake account. One, when someone sends you a friend request, you can look to see who their friends are. One of the identifiers is that they have no friends. Another is that they are only of one gender. And another is that they have no mutual friends of yours. Those are some identifiers. Other things are that they're military pictures and they're the same pictures, or that there are no posts on their account, or that there are very few posts on those accounts. Those are big identifiers. Other things that you could do to identify if it's a fake account is you can message that person, and you can look at the verbiage when it comes back. If it's not the same type of language or appropriate English language, that's going to be a huge identifier in that is a fake account. So you don't want to accept those. You want to delete those, mark them as spam, and move on with it. And oftentimes we get so excited because we want to add this huge following list, but it's not worth it because people are looking to gain access to your information. So do not allow that person in. Now, when I talk about friends, you really only want to allow trusted friends into your social world. And part of the reason why is because if you're allowing people in your social world that don't have the same viewpoint as you, or they don't have the same social filters on the things that they say that you do, that can be a reflection on you. And when it comes to employment, future employment, that can be a problem for you. And so, and not only that, but if you have a friend that has friends that maybe they haven't vetted really well, those people can gain access to your information. So it's really important that you're monitoring who you allow into your social world. And while it seems like you shouldn't have to, we live in an age where you absolutely do. And it really is important because it does affect future relationships and future employment opportunities. Boy, are these tongue twisters today. Okay, now social media is so huge. Everybody loves to take selfies. We love to take pictures of really cute things that we see. Some people like to take pictures of the food that we're eating and places that we're at, vacationing, where we're at for the evening. The challenge here is this. Most of the phones are equipped with GPS location tags on all of the photos. And the same with a lot of the DSLR cameras that are out there and other cameras. And so when you upload your photos, there is a location tag in them. And so if you're sharing your information, people can actually go in and see where you are. And so as I talked earlier about stalking, then someone can actually go find you. And this is not something that you want to happen, especially if somebody has ill intentions. So one of the things that you want to do is disable the GPS location feature when it comes to pictures. And you can turn that off in the camera settings on your phone as well as on a regular camera. And that way, the location is not embedded in the picture anywhere. Also, if you choose to post pictures of whatever it is online, you might want to use the rule of thumb in waiting 24 to 48 hours before you post that picture. This is a safety feature for you because one of the things is if someone were to want to go to your location, well, you're going to be long gone 24 to 48 hours, of course, unless it's like your neighbor's house or down the street, but you know what I mean. You're not at that location anymore. And yet you can still share with your friends and your family the things that you're doing and the things that you like and have a little personal identity for yourself. So that's just kind of the rule of thumb to think about. And when it comes to electronics, whether it's your laptop, your cell phone, websites that you register with, anything that's a password protected thing that you can password protect, you'll want to use an encryption code that is 32 bits. So a combination of letters, numbers, and characters, which are also known as symbols, along with capitals for your password. So, and use lowercase, uppercase, anything. And you don't really want to use a word. You want to use sort of abbreviation. Or if you use a word like the word love, say you could use capital L, the number O, lowercase v, and the 3 for an E. And so you'll want to create a sentence that you can remember, but try and use 32, a string of 32 letters, numbers, or symbols. Now, I know that when you go to some websites, there's a maximum of 8 or something like that, but use the same kind of rule and don't have all your passwords the same. Don't use the same password for every website. Now, you might be saying, well, Rebecca, it's really hard for me to remember all this stuff. And some of you might be saying, well, that's what that browser memory, do you want to save this password is for? That's all great, but 2 things about that. One, if for some reason your browser crashes and it no longer remembers it anymore, then you don't have your password saved anymore. And the other thing is, if it does remember and somebody who shouldn't be on your computer hits it, they have access to those sites. So you want to store those passwords somewhere in a record book off the computer that's in a secure location, and that way you do have it. Is it an inconvenience? Absolutely is. So don't store that password in your browser. Try to remember something that you can remember and keep it to memory that is different. But with all the different ones that are out there that use different characters, the lengths of characters and so on and so forth, keep a book somewhere and keep it to yourself. You know, kind of like the old diary with a lock on it thing, and then don't share your passwords with anybody. Super important. And we always feel like we can trust somebody, but really, you really need to guard these things, because the virtual world is something that has become, unfortunately, a monster, even though we gain so much from it. And finally, and there's so many things to think about when it comes online, but I'm just going to talk about this last one. Keep a separate email for your official business stuff, like your banking information and anything that's kind of official to you, or what you consider official, and then stuff that you consider kind of like junk mail. All the little stuff that you sign up for online or that you have to gain access to that particular site, keep a separate email for that. The thing is that no matter what you sign up for, whether it's official or non-official, your junk site or your official business stuff, when they send you a confirmation email that sends you your username and your password, you want to delete that immediately, and also delete it from the email trash bin. Because hackers generally know that the username and emails will be sent to your password, and if they can hack into your email, then they can get access to a lot of your other information, banking information, and things like that. So you want to be very cognizant of everything that you're doing online, because it affects you in a lot of different ways. And if you keep these steps in place, yeah, they're a little bit inconvenient, but in the long run, this little inconvenience is a lot more convenient than it will be for you to have to try to be replacing funds in a lost bank account, getting your identity back if someone happens to steal your information. And if you talk to people who have had their identity stolen, it is so cumbersome and so long term that it is not worth it. So I hope these things have helped you. I know that there is still many other things that you can do, and if you have some things that you do want to share, I absolutely would love to share that with the TLB TV audience and those out there who are watching the show. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you can stay virtually secure. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for another episode of Rebecca Sounds Reveille, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon and TLB TV.